Dino duel. Dueling dinosaurs. One day in 2006, Clayton Phipps and Mark Idmack man was fossil hunting on a neighbor's land in eastern Montana. The area is known for its many monster fossils. Before long, Inman found a huge pelvis sticking out of the side of a canyon. Soon after, Phipps found an enormous thigh bone nearby. That's when he started to suspect that they might have found a complete dinosaur skeleton. They got to work in caving the bones, which belonged to a plant-eating horned dinosaur. After a couple weeks of work, they were surprised to discover a claw of a meat-eater. Horned skeletons didn't have claws. It soon became clear that Phipps and Inman have found something important: the almost complete fossilized skeleton of two dinosaurs that died and were buried together. The skeletons were removed from the ground, still encased in the blocks of rock and soil called matrix, and taken to a laboratory. When the matrix was removed, 15 carnivore teeth were found embedded in the herbivore, which indicated that the herbivore had been attacked. The carnivore had cracked ribs and a crushed skull, suggesting that the herbivore had kicked it in response. The evidence pointing the two dinosaurs having killed each other. Each dinosaur was also an important find on its own. The carnivore, which is about the size of a polar bear, is similar to many types of the small Tyrannosaurus rex. It could also help scientists answer the question they've long had about whether this kind of dinosaur is a new species or simply a young T-Rex. The herbivore, about the size of an elephant, appears to be a new species of horned dinosaurs. Unlike most fossil finds, both skeletons have all their bones, and the bones of each skeleton were connected rather than separate and scattered. The remains were so well preserved that they included patches of skin, which is practically unheard of among fossils. You'd think that museums across the country would be racing to get their hands on the rare specimens, but you'd be wrong. The story of Montana dueling dinosaurs illustrates a debate in the field of paleontology that has stalled a great deal of scientific research. At the center of the debate are these questions: do dinosaur bones belong to the world or to the people on whose land they're found? And who should be allowed to collect them? To understand why scientists and museums are scrambling to buy these fossils, let's begin by knowing at how and whom they were found. Dueling humans. Clayton Phipps, who first introduced Mark Inman to fossil hunting, is a commercial fossil hunter, also referred to as a commercial collector or independent collector. Both men live in Garfield County, Montana, where the dueling dinosaurs were found, an area with about 1,200 people scattered across roughly 4,800 square miles. Most people who live there are ranchers or farmers. Average incomes are low, and many families struggle to make a living. Dinosaur bones are one of the few plentiful resources in the area. In fact, the entire eastern portion of Montana and western Dakotas contain many fossils. Fossil hunters such as Phipps and Inman asked landowners for permission to search for fossils and split the profits with them when the fossils are sold. Phipps and Inman earn money with each find, but for the landowners, a discovery such as dueling dinosaurs can be a once-in-a-lifetime chance for financial security. Many scientists who heard about dueling dinosaurs wanted these extraordinary specimens to be available for study. Phipps tried to sell the fossils to 3 museums but did not succeed. Phipps' asking price was $15 million, far too much for the museum to afford on its own. The 3 museums also turned down Phipps' offer because the specimens were excavated for commercial fossil hunters rather than academically trained scientists working for the museum or university. The 3 museums were concerned that the excavation wasn't done properly. Why is careful excavation so important? Fossils must be handled with extreme care so they're not damaged. When being removed from the ground, in addition, many details must be recorded, including their position on the ground, the material they were buried in, and whether other fossils were nearby. Those details, as well as others, might hold clues about how paleontologists piece together the conditions under which an animal lived and died. Careless excavation can result in previous data being lost forever. In the words of paleontologist David Truxler, collecting fossils is a one-shot event. If you mess up, there's no do-over. Proper excavation techniques can be learned in places other than colleges and universities, and some commercial fossil hunters may have excavation skills that are good as or better than those of university-trained paleontologists. However, some paleontologists don't trust reports of careful commercial excavations and suspect they're just a way commercial fossil hunters try to drive up the prices of their discoveries. In addition, some scientists and institutions are opposed to buying specimens, even if they are collected properly, because paying money for fossil encourages more people to become commercial fossil hunters. Paleontologist Robert Baker states that the dueling dinosaurs excavation was conducted according to the professional standards. He claims that opposition of the specimen is due to some academic paleontologists being biased against commercial fossil hunters. Another point in the debate centers around how plentiful dinosaur fossils are. Some people argue that dinosaur fossils are scarce and only formally trained scientists should be able to excavate and study them. Others argue that dinosaur fossils are so plentiful that most would be worn away by wind, water, and other natural forces if only a few trained scientists were allowed to collect them. People on both sides of the debate care about where fossils such as dueling dinosaurs end up. Some academic paleontologists are opposed to commercial collection because of the risk of fossils being bought by wealthy private collectors rather than by institutions that will make the fossils available for ongoing scientific study. One important principle of science is that scientific evidence should be available for study by other scientists. In the case of dinosaur bones, scientists want to be able to compare new discoveries with specimens found long ago, as well as their future finds. Fossils can end up in one of several places. A museum might buy the fossil, which would allow them to both display and available for scientific research. A generous buyer might donate them to a scientific institution. A private collector might allow scientific study before displaying the fossils, or might display the fossils privately and not allow scientific study. Even when scientists are initially given access to a particular specimen that's privately owned, they sometimes get another chance later as the fossil is passed down to another family member. That process can take decades or generations, however, and is never graduated. The dueling dinosaurs were found on private land, so according to current Montana law, they belong to the landowners, who can do as they please with them. Since Phipps was unsuccessful in selling them to the museums, the fossils were to auction November 2013. They're expected to sell between 7 and 9 million. However, no bidder offered enough money to meet the auction house's minimum. Whose fossils? Fossil collecting in the United States is restricted only to public lands, and only sometimes some laws regulate the collection of archaeological remains. Those associated with humans are so recent to become fossils. But laws about fossil collecting aren't always clear to consistent. If found on private lands, fossils belong to the landowner, who can keep the fossils or get rid of them as desired. This includes auctioning them off the highest bidder, regardless of where they will end up. The laws about fossil collecting vary in other countries. In Germany, a professional paleontologist must inspect every fossil that is collected. Scientifically important finds become a property of the government, with the finder paid a free fee. Unimportant finds are returned to the finder, who is free to keep or sell them. Some people involved with the paleontology debate consider Germany's policy to be one that the United States should adopt. Others think it would be a mistake for the United States to follow Germany's example. They believe such strict policies could be expensive and inconvenient. To enforce and would violate a property rights of American citizens. Imagine that you're out on a nature hike and you've come across a fossil. Should you pick it up and take it home, report your find, and leave it alone? Children and adults are generally curious about the natural world, and picking up rocks, fossils, and other objects can be fun. These items reflect the history of our planet, its geological cycles, as well as its diverse life forms, many of which are now extinct. According to the Black Hills Institute of Geological Research, more than four-fifths of all important fossils have been found by amateurs. The dueling dinosaurs aren't the last amazing fossil discovery that will make place in your lifetime. Many others will not that be made. Some academic scientists, others become commercial fossil hunters, and still others by everyday citizens on nature outings. What will the fate of those fossils be?